Welcome to That Pennsylvania Witch podcast. My name is Caitlin Dawn. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to That Pennsylvania Witch podcast. On today's episode, I welcome author, artist, and folklorist Nina Mielipäivä. And Nina has written a delightful book entitled Mythology of the Sámi, Storytelling and Voices of Minorities Within Minorities. Thanks for coming on today, Nina.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Do you mind introducing yourself briefly?
Sure. My name is Nina, and I'm of mixed heritage. My father was a Finn. From my father's side, it's mainly Finnish. Then from my mother's side, it's more of a mixture. There is Umea Sámi, Kemin Sámi, so Finnish, little bit of Northern Sámi. Grandpa was a Sámi. He passed away 7 years ago. A lot about this book is really me connecting with my grandpa's side of the family and the culture where he came from. Yeah, some of the stories in the book came from that storytelling tradition that I was introduced when I was a child.
It's a wonderful book. Growing up in Finland, how present was that culture in your life? I mean, I know that you had it from your family, but was it something that you learned about growing up, or was it mostly the oral retelling from your family members?
It's a bit of a mixture because in Finland we have several different Sámi groups, and my grandfather, he came from the very old forest Sámi family. And the forest Sámi, they tend to be quite discriminated in Finland, sadly. But it's more like in the way people live their lives in this certain area. Basically, it's very self-sufficient. People hunt, people fish, people gather berries and mushrooms. They have very specific dialect that they speak. There's lots of animism as well. So it's a bit of its own culture, the whole basically northeastern area in Finland where this Sámi culture, where my family originates. It's a bit of its own bubble. It is somewhat different to mainstream Finnish culture.
Well, I think that the animism is the common denominator with all of the things that I've studied, and I think that's very beautiful, especially with Indigenous people, because it is so different from modern society and how we relate to the earth. There's no separation with animism. I think that's beautiful. So was there a moment when you realized you wanted to explore these stories more deeply?
Maybe not a specific moment, but just within, say, after the pandemic, during 2021, I lost both of my grandmothers and they died 6 months from each other. And then I had this sort of very deep sense of longing to be part of something, bigger. And I remember having this chat with my cousin, and we both talked about this sort of sadness you feel when you have lost all of your grandparents, and you have lost all of your grandpas and all of your grandmothers. You get this bit of a drifting feeling. I think maybe that was behind this book as well.
I can empathize with that. And I think you're right. You feel, I'm speaking from personal experience now, but you feel compelled to record that history because so much of it gets lost if you don't. It feels good to connect to your heritage. Did your perception of Sámi culture change as you grew older?
Thing is, when I grew up in the 90s here in Finland, there was lots of racism and race stereotypes about the Sámi in the media, in the pop culture. People are very critical about it now, of course. So with my grandfather, he didn't really like to speak about his Sámi roots because of that. And it always made me a little sad. So definitely my perception has changed a bit, but also I have studied a lot more. I have studied the archaeology and history, so I'm a lot more aware of things. And just you see things that weren't taught to you in the schools, and you learn things about what happened and how our perceptions are also changed by the narratives in the media, all kinds of things. You get a lot more wider perspective when you grow older. Yeah, it's a learning process always.
Now, the phrase that you use, minorities within minorities, that's powerful. What does that mean in the context of your work?
Well, when I started to write this book, and I was like, I'm going to write a book about the Sámi, and I will do that in English because there's not a lot of information in English. And when I look at some of the other books that were written about the Sámi, most of them were about, reindeer Sámi, in Norway and in Sweden, in Lapland. But then I thought I should write about the Sámi here in Finland, the less known Sámi groups, because that's what I am more familiar with. So I ended up writing about the forest Sámi and the fishing Sámi. So for the listeners, we can roughly divide the Sámi groups into three different categories based on their old occupations. So first we would have fishermen Sámi, and those would be like the sea Sámi in the coast of Norway. Or here in Finland, the Inari Sámi, they live by the Inari Lake. Traditionally, they were fishermen. Then we have the forest Sámi. Here in Finland, the forest Sámi are the Kemin Sámi, and they live in the northeastern Finland. And sadly, the Kemi Sámi, they lost their language by the 1950s due to the Finnification policies here in Finland. Then there used to be also forest Sámi in Norway. I don't think they exist anymore there. Then in Sweden, there are forest Sámi sort of in southern Lapland area in Umaja, in Luleå by the Pite River. So there's quite a big forest Sámi population also in Sweden. And then we have the reindeer Sámi, or the also called as mountain Sámi, and the northern Sámi. And these would be the northern Sámi in Norway and very top of Sweden as well. I think also the Kola Sámi in Russia, I think they are also reindeer Sámi. So there we have three major Sámi groups. And a lot of times when people think about the Sámi, a lot of people think about the reindeer Sámi. It's sort of the perception that people have. So there's not a lot of information about the Sámi groups. But this has some historical origins, because in the 1800s, when there were anthropologists studying the Sámi in Lapland, these are like based on old race theories, so these are not valid anymore. But these anthropologists, they decided that the reindeer Sámi are like on the top of the Sámi, and all the other Sámi groups are sort of fallen from grace. So it's pretty racist theory. But here in Finland, there are some ethno-nationalist reindeer Sámi groups or northern Sámi groups who still believe those old theories, and they discriminate other Sámi groups. And this has been going on since like the 1950s, when the sort of Sámi nationalist movements began. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But also here in Finland, there's like 10,000 Sámi altogether. 8,000 of them are northern Sámi. So absolutely not. This doesn't apply to all northern Sámi. Yeah, that happens.
It happens. It's something that happens. It happened across the entire globe. It happened quite a bit here, of course. And we're finally starting to uncover some of we all know about the things that happened here in the United States to the Indigenous people, and the terrible treatment and the genocide and all of that. But what people are finally starting to realize is the primary reason for the teaching was to erase that culture. Because if you erase the language, if you erase the connection to the land, it's much easier to get people to conform to what you want as a society. And I think that's heartbreaking. And I'm really glad that you're telling your story. For listeners who might be unfamiliar, how would you describe Sámi mythology?
Very animistic, and it emphasizes the connection between man and nature. So originally, before all the land rights and whatever, the Sámi believed that land or nature, it was sort of borrowed from the spirits. So the spirits allowed people to live in the land, or the family to live in the land for, generations. But it was like a bargain between the spirits and the people.
I can get behind that. A lot of people don't know how to differentiate. So Finland is actually not in Scandinavia, is that right?
That's true.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know how to differentiate what they would label as Scandinavian or Scandinavia or what region. People tend to lump all of this together with the Norse culture and the Norse mythology, and it's very different. What are some of the main differences between Sámi culture and this other type of mythology that is more widespread?
Well, there's lots of animal worship. One of my favorite stories from the Sámi come from the Kola Sámi from Russia. They believe that their ancestor was this reindeer man called Miandash. People believed that all the way to the 1920s, I believe, that they all originated from this man. So Miandash, he was a son of a witch, and he was born in this land that was like between the living and the dead. And when he would leave his home, he would turn into a reindeer, and eventually he married a human woman, and then they had children together, and the children became also shapeshifters. They become reindeer in the human world. So the family line continued. So it's a very interesting story. But also in Lapland, in general, also the Sámi area, it covers Laplands of Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Russia. There's this belief, well, there are multiple beliefs because, the regions have different type of beliefs. Many Sámi groups believed the great reindeer spirit. The great reindeer spirit usually be a man or a reindeer. Then you would sacrifice reindeers for him in hope to have good luck when with reindeer herds. Also, the sun goddess is very interesting, the Sámi myths. Sun goddess was mostly worshipped in the Lapland of Sweden, and her name was Päivä or Päivi, and depends on the dialect. White female reindeers were sacrificed for the sun goddess. And I think the sun goddess is fascinating because you can find her from the Northern Europe, the Baltics. The Balts also worship the sun goddess. And here in Finland, people also worship the sun goddess before Christianity. And also the Vikings had their own sun goddess. I think it's fascinating how they all just have their own sun goddess, their own version of it. And if we look at the Sámi shaman drums, there are different types of shaman drums. The drums that can be found from Lapland of Sweden, they usually have the sun in the middle because the sun was the giver of life. The shaman drums that can be found from the forest Sámi, they usually have 3-layered worlds. So you can see the 3 different worlds. There's our world, the middle world, then there's the underworld. It's the world of the dead and the spirits, and then there is the world above, which is the world of the gods. So the forest Sámi shaman drum has those 3 layers. There are not that many Sámi shaman drums left. The original ones, many of them were destroyed by the church, and there was this big collection of Sámi shaman drums in Denmark in a museum, but it burned in a fire. It was in the 18th century. There are not that many Sámi shaman drums left. There are modern drums. There are many modern drums, but like the old drums. I think there are only like 2 Kemi Sámi shaman drums. One of them is in Germany in a museum, and another one is here in Finland in Inari Sámi Museum.
The artwork and the designs on the drums that you have in your book are beautiful. And there are so many differences. What kind of spirits, beings, or forces appear in Sámi stories?
Well, if we continue with the forest Sámi, I think they have quite fascinating mythology. They worship basically 2 deities, a thunder god and a hunter goddess. The name of the thunder god they worshipped was called Tiermes. They sacrificed axes for him or something like that. And the thunder is a very powerful force, of course. And then the hunter goddess, her name was Akka, and people sacrificed reindeer for her, also wild deer. And then I think they had this custom to paint caves with blood to honor her. And also, like, it's pretty common with the Sámi, this worship of large stone formations. So this also happened with Tiermes and Akke. There were these large stones that were sort of dedicated to the deities, and then people would leave sacrifices underneath the stones. Yeah, the sort of standing stone traditions, they're called Seita. One of the functions of the Seita was that because it's a large stone, you would leave sacrifices underneath the Seita. If it was a fishing Seita, you would leave fish. And then it was believed that the Seita was more like a portal. It would sort of connect your request with the certain deity or deities. So if you would leave fish, then you would ask the fish gods to give you fish. So the Seita would, be a mediator between man and the divine. Same with the reindeer Seita. And then there were also Seitas for families where generations might go and work with the certain stones. It's quite fascinating. So the Seita itself, it's like a gate between the divine and the humans. With reindeer Seita, I know that sometimes people would hang like antlers above the stone. So the antlers would point out to the skies. Then you would have direct connection with the god or goddess.
That's fascinating, actually.
It is.
I've been studying, just tracing the roots of an antlered goddess that I am very familiar with, who I think has been filtered through the lens of many different generations because she's called a forgotten goddess. And then some people argue that she doesn't exist at all, goddesses in general, specifically reindeer antlered goddesses, have been depicted in a lot of the European mythology that we've uncovered and that I've been looking into, because there's a goddess that we know today as Ellen of the Ways. And I think there's so much more to that story. When we see an antlered goddess with reindeer antlers in a Southern European culture, to me, that tells me that someone from the North brought their traditions down with them when they immigrated, when they moved their families. A lot of times people don't give credit to the cultures that this would have originated from, in my opinion, that they likely originated from, because we have a female goddess archetype with reindeer antlers. And I had to look into this because I didn't know enough about it. But of course, the female reindeer doesn't shed her antlers in the winter. And I think that we can trace a lot of the animistic belief to the Sámi people, to these animistic cultures that lived well before these myths would have originated in kind of the southern area of Europe. That's just a theory, but I think I think a lot of these concepts are much older than we give them credit for, and in some ways they've been adapted or forcibly taken in other ways. Are there any specific myths or figures that you find especially meaningful?
The story of the three goddesses, and this comes from Sweden as well, that I like. It's the three daughters of Matterakka. She's like I guess you would say Mother Earth type of goddess. She's also the mother of life, or sometimes like a grandmother deity. So basically, these are like the deities that were worshipped in Sweden. When the child was born, the life was given by Radi, who was like the god of justice, god of life. He would breathe life to the child, and then in the womb, Matterakka, the Mother Earth, would sort of piece the child together, give the physical form to the child. And then she had three daughters, three sisters. They were called Yuksakka, Uksakka, and Sarakka. Sarakka was protector of women and girls, and goddess of childbirth. So when woman was giving birth, and when the birth was successful, the woman would sacrifice porridge for Sarakka. And then Yuksakka was the protector of boys and men, and goddess of hunt. When parents wanted to have a boy child, they would hang like a bow and an arrow to the cradle, and they would ask Yuksakka to give them a boy child. Sometimes people believe people could do that still when the woman was pregnant. So she could like reverse the gender of the child. Yuksakka would look after the boy or the man throughout their lives, and then Sarakka would look after the woman. And then Uksakka, who was the third goddess, she was more gender neutral. She looked after all the children and they were born. And the name Uksakka, it refers to the doors or doors of the home. So she would guard like gateways and entries. The child, child would be, running around the house and the yard. They are depicted, these three goddesses, in the shaman drums, in the bottom of the shaman drum. These are like the Swedish shaman drums. I always thought that was very cute. You are protected by three sisters. And then I believe that in Sweden, at some point, there was a bit of a cult following of Sarakka, or she had this own like groups that followed her or worshipped her, like also men worshipping her. Christianity began to spread in Lapland. There were those people who, followed the old ways. So if child was christened in the church, but the family wanted to still follow the old ways, they would wash away the Christian baptism, and then they baptized the child again in the name of Sarakka. So I thought that was fascinating. So little moments of rebellion going on.
That is fascinating. One thing that fascinated me, and I was surprised I had never heard it before, but in reading about Sámi mythology in your book, and also some other books that I purchased because I went down a rabbit hole because of your book, the sun is often seen as a female life-giving force, which we briefly touched on, almost like a mother to the world. And then the moon was considered to be kind of like the other end of that spectrum, the male, the opposite of what other Indigenous cultures believe. Most other Indigenous cultures believe.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you think that obviously it's probably because it was so important that the sun returned every year because of how harsh the weather is in the north?
Yeah, I do think it has to do with the darkness in the winter time. Just also maybe the coldness, Because when you see the moon in the sky and you live somewhere way up north, people thought the moon was suspicious because, it replaced the sun. But then when the summer came, it was all plentiful. There's more food to eat. There's more warmth. So I think it does have to do with the environment. Yeah, the stories about the moon are quite fascinating because sometimes he's very suspicious character. Maybe he's a troll. Maybe he's an evil spirit. You never really know about the moon. Then when we think about Greece or Egypt, then it's the opposite. The moon is a female and often very feminine character, sometimes for cultural difference.
When you think about the sun as the life giver, because that is the reason why we're able, there are many factors about why life is able to exist on this planet, but the sun is the reason why we're able to live here. And so the sun as the life giver, that makes sense to me. Are there any values or worldview that these stories and these mythologies tend to reflect more often than not?
I think especially when it comes to some myths, there's a lot of respect for other beings, like, animals. Even though people did hunt and fish, there was also this deep respect to live a sustainable lifestyle. Like if you would fish, then you would leave some of that fish to the lake, or you would release some of the catch with the reindeer and with the bears. If people would find, for example, killed a body or skeleton of a reindeer or a bear, they always had to be buried with full skeleton. So if you had like a piece of bone missing, then it would mean that this animal could not reincarnate in the next life. So they always had to be buried with all the bones. That was a very big part of the belief that, it's not only humans who reincarnate, but also the animals. Everything is part of the circle of life.
That is fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about the Sámi belief surrounding reincarnation?
Yeah, it does changes at some point when there is more elements from Christianity. But one of the stories that I like is that this idea that when a shaman would travel to the underworld, maybe in a form of a bird or a fish, they would require knowledge from the passed away people. They would travel to the underworld to meet other shamans who had, lived before. Then they would require knowledge that way. So there's not a lot of written information about the reincarnation or the reincarnation process, but there was this belief that a person might be reborn back to their family, or some of their energy might come back, or that, some of the passed away relatives, they might be almost become like a worshipped figures in the family, that you would honor your ancestors, you would leave them gifts.
I know that preserving Indigenous mythology is important, and we've spoken a little bit about why it's important to you. What challenges exist when you're sharing these cultural traditions that have historically been marginalized or attempted to be erased?
Well, here in Finland, I don't know how it is in Norway and in Sweden, but we are not really taught a lot about Sámi when we are in schools. And I did once read from some teacher that, teachers can teach about the Sámi, like doing those modules when they can decide themselves what they want to teach. Teacher can decide themselves. But how many teachers are decide to teach about the Sámi if they don't know about the culture, if they don't have like affiliation to the culture? So most of us don't really learn anything because of that. And that's difficult. And then we have this, very limited knowledge about the Sámi, or it's very stereotypical idea of all the Sámi being the reindeer herders or something, which is not really the case. But here in Finland, I would say in the past 10 years, there's been a bit more things going on with a lot of the new organizations being found. So that study, forest Sámi heritage and then fisherman Sámi heritage and revive the language, things like that. But it's still in its starting point, I should say. But still, people are working on things, which is cool.
I don't even want to bring this up, but I have to, because when you talk about the stereotypical, a lot of people recognize the stories and the imagery from Lapland and other areas, just the reindeer. That's it. That's all they
Mhm.
focus on. Have you had a lot of people asking you about the movie Frozen or Frozen 2 in particular? Because there were some things about that and recognizing a culture that maybe hasn't been recognized globally. But I would imagine that you probably had a lot of questions about that as well because of that film.
A little bit,
A
yeah.
little bit.
I did include an interview in my book about the Frozen films. Yeah, the second Frozen film, it was done together with groups of Northern Sámi from Norway. So there was indigenous people like making the movie as well, going through it. So yeah.
That's good. Are there often voices within Sami communities that are overlooked? You said that the forest Sami particularly.
Yeah, especially here in Finland, the forest Sami and then Inari Sami as well, somewhat. That's because here in Finland, the Sami parliament, it's mainly made of Northern Sami, and they notoriously like to discriminate other Sami groups. And this has been going on for a long time. But now the thing is, when Forest Sami here in Finland, when they were sort of targeted with the Finnification policies, and this started in the 1600s, Finland was part of Sweden at the time under the Swedish crown. And then it was beneficial for the King of Sweden to try to use Finnification policy for the forest Sami. And the Finnification policies here in Finland, it mostly targeted Kuusama area, which is also where my grandpa was from. And this is a county in northeastern Finland. It's very close to the border of Russia. So it was targeted with the Finnification policies. So basically, the King of Sweden told all the priests in the area to force the Sami to speak Finnish and erase the language and erase the culture. That's because this area is very rich when it comes to natural resources. It's the place where the salmon goes to migrate in the rivers, and there's tons of woodlands and animals. And when I went through like my ancestors, names and where they lived, there are like these tax registers, how much beaver furs and foxtails they have paid to the King of Sweden taxes and all that. So the king wanted to tax people. That's why they were converted. They were targeted with the Finnification policies, and this led to the loss of language. Then in Sweden, the reindeer herder that were Northern Sami, they weren't really targeted with the same language policy that early because the King of Sweden saw them more beneficial because the King of Sweden needed meat for its army, and the army was fed, and the fur was used from the reindeer herders. So the language shift happened much later on. And here in Finland, with the Sami parliament, because it's mostly made of Northern Sami, the way they sort of don't want Inari Sami and the Forest Sami to vote in the Sami register is now with the new language policy, which basically means that you can only vote in the Sami parliament if your parent or grandparents spoke a Sami language. With most the Sami groups here in Finland that were Forest Sami and Fishermen Sami, the language was erased already 300 years ago. So there's no way you can prove if your
Right.
your grandmother spoke the language. You probably great grandmother maybe, but not your grandmother. In Norway, it's if you can prove that your great grandmother spoke a Sami language, you can vote in the Sami parliament. So it's very deliberate. So it's a very small group of Sami who can vote in Finland in the Sami parliament.
Yeah, that is really limited. That's really limited.
There's
That's
politics for you.
yeah,
And
yes.
the Finland Sami parliament gets funding from the Finnish government, so they get 8 million euros for a year or two for Sami culture. But it's only like 9 people who decide things. They're all Northern Sami. So this has created lots of friction in Finland with the Sami.
That's
And
understandable.
then in Sweden, they have their own Sami policy, and in Norway. And I heard that in Sweden, they also have some kind of strange policies when it comes to the forest Sami in Sweden as well. But it all goes back to what I said in the beginning, goes to those race theories in the 1900s. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Mm.
What was it like What was it like growing up where you grew up with your grandparents? Did you hunt? Did you fish? Did you explore or hike or appreciate the land around you?
Yeah, my grandpa actually, he used to work as a forest ranger, so he was always fishing. He didn't really like to hunt, but I do remember being a little girl. I would walk with him in the woods, and then he would tell me stories about the animals and the trees. Just later on, I realized many of them were Sámi stories. Yeah, but he was very much in tune with the environment. He loved being outside. He's a very outdoorsy person, even if it's like minus 30 degrees. He was just in the woods fishing. Yeah.
Remembering those stories is so
Mm.
beautiful. I love that. It's really fascinating that you got to hear those stories from your own ancestors. Can you tell me about what was the writing process for this book? Because this book is wonderful. I'll have a link so people can purchase it. I've actually already sent it out to my friends in my reading group to suggest that they
Oh,
purchase it because it's really great.
thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. What was the writing process like for it?
Well, it was a lot of research. I started to study Sami myths already 10 years ago, I would say 2015, just for my personal interest. And I knew that, Grandpa was a Sami, so I wanted to sort of connect with the culture through the myths, I would say. So I had sort of basic knowledge about the Sami mythology when I started to write. But then I went through all the, history of the Finnification policy, which there was a lot of records, I would say. There was lots of information about it, how people were sort of indirectly turned against their own heritage. But like in this area in Kuusa, with a lot of the priests, some of the tactics that they used to convert people from paganism to Christianity and then not to speak the language, it was quite sadistic. It's awful. But I read lots of court records from the 1600s and then read a lot about current Sami politics as well. A lot of the very complicated land rights, lots of court records, lots of land rights, lots of books, lots of documentaries. Speaking with some of my Sami friends and their experiences. Yeah, and talking about the language. So like my ancestry. The Kemin Sami language, it's quite fascinating. It's sort of an Eastern Sami language. Now they are reviving the language. There's a university group that it's reviving the language. But they used to call it as the language of demons and dogs, the priests. It's insane because it's a very beautiful language, what I've heard. And then there was this woman who I also quote in the book in one of the interviews who said that, I think she was an Inari Sami. And when her sister was born, was it in the 1960s or 1970s, the priest said that the mother cannot give the child a Sami name. They have to give them a Finnish name. So then the mother ended up giving a Finnish name to the daughter, even though they did want to give them a Sami name, but they weren't allowed to do that. So yeah, it's awful.
It is awful.
It's really racist as well.
Very clear, just in the brief jump into the history that I made. Just to kind of research for our conversation, and some of the references in the back of your book, very biased, very racist. Are there any lessons in Sámi mythology that you think are relevant today, or that should be relevant, that could help people connect more to the world around them or to the nature spaces around them?
Yeah, I think the connection with the nature, of course, is always important. Just when it comes to like seeing maybe the archetypical patterns in the myths, maybe they can help to understand the world a little better. Like I love archetypes. I love to study archetypes. And it's fascinating to me how a certain character appears in mythology in Lapland, and then I can find it from Africa or from China. I always think it's fascinating. But in the end, I think the reason why that is because humans always like to have archetypes, and we have similar storytelling patterns, and we are not really that different from each other, no matter where we come from. I think, especially for the Sami culture, for anyone who is interested in animism, definitely Sami culture is a very good place to start. It's very fascinating, and also it has these layers in the belief systems. There are some elements from Christianity which are like later on added, but there's definitely some of the older worldview there as well. It's more about the living in peace with the environment.
You yourself at the beginning of this interview said that you were searching for connection. And I think that these stories, they connect us all.
I agree.
What do you hope readers take away from your book?
I hope that anyone who is interested in the Arctic cultures finds it fascinating, and also that I try to give like multiple point of views from different things. There are interviews, there are like historical documents, and myths and legends. So you get like multiple different angles to the cultures and learn about history as well as being entertained by the stories.
It's such a rich history and really beautiful. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I just want to thank you for joining us and sharing your insights and stories today. It's been fascinating to learn more about Sámi mythology and the deeper ideas behind your book. If you enjoyed this conversation, to make sure you check out the book.
If someone wants to follow me online, my name is Witch of Kitka. Oh yeah, that's where you can find me on YouTube and other places. And the book is on Amazon and hopefully within the next few months also in Barnes and Nobles. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on. And until next time, keep exploring these stories that shape our world.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.